good to go.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to the public session of the Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting of August 13, 2024. Might we all raise and salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We welcome everyone tonight, whether you be in the remote airwaves from up to the North Country. Thank you, Mayor, for patching in, or the public that's listening in as well, or anyone here in person. We will go first into the hearing of citizens. Greg, can you give us the rules?
Members of the public are now welcome to come up to the microphone to address the Township Committee. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. Those present may step up to the microphone to be heard. If you're watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether in person or online, when you are recognized to speak, please mind the following procedures. Please say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. You do not need to give your street number. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, the Township Committee will wait until you finish speaking before responding. There are 2 public comment sessions on tonight's agenda. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 3 minutes during each public comment period. Written comments submitted to the Township Clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment sessions, which we did not have any, but even if we had, written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full, according to guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services.
Okay. Since if I heard you correctly, we have no written comments to be read.
That's correct.
Do we have anybody that wishes to come up to speak? Having seen none,
And
do we have anybody online?
We do not have any hands raised on Zoom.
Being that we have no comments at this time, I will close the hearing of citizens. And we will go into the workshop session. First item on the agenda is the Board of Adjustment Annual Report. Mr. Tony Vivona is here, if he might step up.
There we go. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me in. Sorry it took so long for us to get here. Scheduling has been lovely. Last year, 2023, we had 18 cases for the Board of Adjustments. 16 were residential. 1 was a cell tower, and all they wanted to do was add some new equipment to an existing tower, so it was very simple. And we also did I believe it was a D variance for St. Hubert's, where they started a veterinary clinic open to the public. So I'm glad we got that done. Most of the variances were small things, just side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks for small additions. There's nothing really contentious last year. We do have 2 new board members since Mr. McHugh left us, and we are in the process of getting 1 more. I was given a name. I've actually been swamped, so I have not reached out to the gentleman, but I will do that. Hopefully he's still interested. See, we had a couple of pools. It's all, last year was all very, very minor stuff. Everything got approved. 1 in the R4 zone on Woodland made several changes that we recommended and only had to get 1 variance for a deck. So he was happy to work with us and not build something too big for the neighborhood, which is one of our sticking points for the R4 area. Building a house that's way too big for the neighborhood, and it affects other property owners' values. It affects their views, line of sight views. And they're building these giant houses where they don't have any place for kids to play now. As far as our recommendations, that's one of our main things, is we'd like to keep the R4 zone to smaller homes, to keep the neighborhoods consistent, and to have somewhat affordable housing left in Chatham, where you're taking a $800,000 house and turning it into a $1.8 million house, and people can't afford that. And now you got a giant house in a little neighborhood, and it doesn't fit. Like I said last year, the people who are in the less expensive homes are more likely to be involved in the community, more likely to be coaches for Little League and den mothers and all that stuff. So I would really like if the council could sort of enforce some sort of limitations with floor ratios or larger setbacks to keep the house smaller, just so we can have a variety of homes in Chatham, so not every house is a 5,000 square foot house. I think the work that we've done has really added to the look of Chatham by limiting some of the really outrageous requests and being fair with the people who are applying for variances. And we try to have them redo calculations to make sure that we can eliminate some of the variances, because the architects all know you don't ask, you don't get. So they come in with this grandiose plan, and then we will talk with them, and did you have any other plans? Well, yeah, we can lower this, we can change that. And by doing that, we keep the variances to a minimum, and everyone usually leaves happy. We try not to be we try not to fight with the people. We try to reason with them, and most of them just want a little bit bigger room for their families, or a poor layout, or the house they bought, or if a builder built something too big and there's no room for a pool. That's several of our applications deal with that, just because the pool needs to be 2 feet closer to the side. So there's nothing outrageous last year. This year we've had a couple of more challenging ones, but again, like on Susan Drive, house on a cliff, the builder was very, very reasonable. He came back several times with different plans, and we finally came up with something that we're both happy with, that fits the neighborhood. And we limited several of the variances by allowing him to move the house closer to the street to disturb less steep slopes. We're working on some signage issues, like with Dunkin' Donuts. So we're trying to keep the businesses in Chatham Township vibrant and competitive, because that whole Hickory Square Shopping Center has very poor signage. If you're not like in the parking lot, you can't see it. So he was very happy with what we allowed him to do. I believe it was M&T Bank, same thing. They wanted a different sign, and they don't want anything outrageous, but it's just out of code, so we have to do the variance. So I think we've done a lot of good for those two shopping centers, and that's pretty much it. There's no more cell tower stuff except for updating equipment. So anytime they change something, they have to get a variance again. I think we've come up with a very good procedure for the cell towers that are up. If you look at our cell towers, they're all consistent. The wires are matching the poles. The fences are all nice looking. You go to like behind the police station, it's a horrible eyesore, because that wasn't under my my rule. But I think for the most part, the cell towers are, you don't even notice them anymore. And they're consistent. So I think we all did a good job with that.
Thank you, Mr. Pavona. A couple of questions, if you don't mind. You mentioned 3 recommendations essentially on your report. One is about the massing that you describe as far as how do we retain the feel of the smaller houses among the bigger houses, among everything. And you mentioned the signage on the improvements, and so kudos to all the work you guys do as volunteers and the time you spend. And you had something mentioning also the corner lots, which is a space concern. But I did have a question, and that is, these are the recommendations from the board. And are these recommendations consistent with the recommendations that had been made in prior years? Is this a repeat set of recommendations, or is this all new?
This is multiple repeat.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any questions from anybody for Mr. Vavona?
No, I
Mayor?
just want to thank you for your service. You've done an amazing job, and you've been at it for a really long time. So I just want to say thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate everything, and I do appreciate that you make it not contentious and it's more educational and trying to bring, meet residents' needs, but in a way that complies with the standards and the requirements. I'm trying to remember, because I know I know you've brought it up, and the floor area ratio was one that I know we brought back to. Oh, sorry, my house is very busy here right now, but the floor area ratio is one that we definitely had discussions on. I can't remember, Mr. Shadi, do you recall where we left off on that? Was there no interest in pursuing? I thought maybe we were going to get recommendations from John Rushke on what that might look like and what the impact would be.
Mayor,
This is going back a while.
yeah, I'm gonna check my notes. We do have John here. John, do you remember where it left off, that discussion about floor to area ratio and all? I know there was, I thought you had prepared a memo and that was transmitted to.
I think it was Frank Banish who prepared the.
Oh, Frank did? Okay.
Yeah, but it was discussed, was discussed years ago, frankly, and don't recall, where it didn't really get much momentum, at the planning board.
But it could come from the township committee also. It doesn't have to come from the
Absolutely.
planning board.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, I'm open to having a discussion at one of the workshop meetings to think about what that might look like and what the implication would be.
What they're building fits the requirements. So what we're trying to do is change the requirements, just so it's not possible to build such a huge house on a small lot. I mean, our 4 lot's only 10,000 square feet, and they've got a 5,000 square foot house on it because it fits within the setbacks. One more thing I'd like to mention is the houses that are not parallel to the main street. Again, they fit in the envelope, and they didn't trigger any questions or variances from the building inspectors. But what we have done with the 2 houses on Fairmont, we required extensive landscaping and screening, and those 2 homes now we really can't even see. So by following our recommendations, they have their home facing the direction they want, and it's not as obvious to the passersby. So that's one way we work with the people. And we always tell them that, we want to make you happy and your neighbors happy. So a lot of times some neighbors will come in and not agree with the variances that are requested because they think that it'll hurt their home and their value. But we have been able to work through 99% of them. Only one that I can recall where the one neighbor wouldn't let his other neighbor come on his property for a site visit. They never made up. But other than that, everyone will voice their concern about the size of a project, and by the time we're done with it, with screening, landscaping, all types of other issues, we try to make everybody leave at least satisfied, but hopefully happy.
All right.
Well, I've received many complaints over the 5 years I've been on the township committee, and not one is regarding the zoning board. So that's very high praise to the work that you're doing, so I appreciate it.
Alrighty, anyone else with comments? Mark?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the mayor's comments. Thank you for your service, and the Board of Adjustment really is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to be on the Board of Adjustment, and it's a lot of technical information to digest, and a lot of zoning to look into, and even people that are have some background in construction or building often stretch to be on the board, and it's a big commitment, and sometimes it's hard to get people to be on the board, right? You'll have a vacancy for a while, but you've been on the board now for as long as I can remember.
Since Kevin Tubbs was mayor.
Yeah, so you're talking 2010, when is it? 2014? Okay. There you go. So that's a long time.
I've been chairman for at least 6.
Yeah. So that's excellent. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Shahadi, I guess you can work out with the mayor on agenda items for discussion, and I reiterate, thank you very much, Mr. Vivona, and your board. You
well,
do
thank
yeoman's work, and thank you for coming in and clarifying what you've done and where you've been and where you see us going. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you, guys. Good night.
All right, the next workshop agenda is on the engineering portion, which will be a discussion by Mr. Rushke, our engineer, regarding the sewage treatment plant review of capacity. And we've all received a report that is extensive.
Yes, and Acting Chair, if I may, the memo had been provided a couple months ago, but we
Yes.
had full agendas, and so this was pushed off for a time when we could have a thoughtful discussion on it. But the point of this also is to inform our capital spending for the WPC, which was not included in our previous capital discussions, because it is a standalone kind of topic, and there's a lot to discuss, not just in capacity of an existing facility, but also planning for the future. So based off of the discussion today, one thing you can expect is in the coming months, a capital ordinance to address these issues that Mr. Rushke will bring to your attention.
Certainly, that's compelling in the report, is that the maybes are something that would likely not be small. So I give the floor to Mr. Rushke, if you will, please.
John, I can't hear you. Is your mic on?
It is not, Mayor. I had just
Thank
turned
you.
it on. You're welcome. So the plant is located at the end of Tanglewood Lane in a remote portion of the township. Now, we have an approved sewer service area and an approved future sewer service area. You know, the existing sewer service area generally picks up all the homes and properties that are along the Southern Boulevard corridor, the Shunpike corridor, the Myersville. The major developed portions of the town is served by the sewer treatment plant. Years ago, we actually, there was a separate independent plant that was operating at the Chatham Glen facility, and that we made a decision years ago, either spend millions of dollars to upgrade that plant, or we actually converted it to a pump station, and now that is now discharged into Tanglewood. So now we no longer operate 2 plants, we now just operate 1 plant. The plant was constructed initially in the 1960s, so some of the equipment is 60 years old. There was a major renovation that occurred in the 90s, so some of the infrastructure is 30 years old. So it's still The plant is actually at a point where there is some major infrastructure rehabilitation that's necessary just to keep up the equipment before the equipment fails. We do try to keep up with the maintenance of the plant and try to avoid that tipping point where something turns into an emergency and we pay for a lot more. So we do, but we also try to get as much of that asset, the value of that asset that we have, so we push the limit to make sure that we're not replacing it too prematurely also. So right now, the plant is permitted to treat 1 million gallons a day. That's average flow. We actually upgraded the capacity. When we combine the two plants, we have a permitted discharge of 1.155 million gallons a day that we can discharge to the Passaic River. Now, that we do not have the treatment capacity, or I should say we don't have the permitted capacity to treat up to that 1.155. We only have a permit to treat up to 1 MGD. So in order to upgrade the plant to allow it to treat more flow, we would have to apply for a treatment works approval permit from the DEP, demonstrate that all the components in the plant and can accommodate that higher flow rate in order to get that permit. Now, as and that, like I said, that happened several years ago where we updated that. So we have taken into consideration, as we do improvements on the plant, we do install the equipment that would accommodate that higher flow. For example, we replaced the UV disinfection equipment, and when we replaced that so that it had a capacity of the 1.155. And when we're replacing pumps or whatever the thing, so we do take that in consideration as we're doing replacement parts or upgrades at the plant. We take into consideration that someday we may want to apply for that TWA permit to increase the capacity of the flow. So, my report goes into like all the various components within the of the plant itself. I also handed out an aerial that I thought if there was any particular question, I actually identify all the various components that are located in the plant. And unless the committee wants me to go painstaking through every single component, I won't do that. I'll just kind of hit the highlights. The one component that in order to, if we wanted today to move forward with that increased treatment capacity to permit that to increase more flow, the one component that is deficient is the sand filters. And that's the only component that right now that wouldn't accommodate that increase in flow. We would have to add another module to that to accommodate that. So that's the main component that we would have to change in order to get the capacity done. Now, as I said, the plant was actually constructed in the 60s, and there are still components that have not been upgraded since that time. So we've gotten all the useful life out of some of this equipment, and it is time to look at replacement. And there's three components that need to be looked at. The first is the influent pump station, which is basically all the flow runs to the plant by gravity, and then basically this pump station pumps the water to the beginning of the plant, and then it actually runs through gravity through the plant. So you need that increase in capacity just to bump that up, and that piece of equipment has not been replaced. Right now, if you were to inspect it, it's frankly a tin can in the ground, and it's difficult to work in. It's a confined space. In order to lower yourself into where the pumps are located, you have to step on this dated elevator for a single person to go down into it. So it is something that we do need to start to look at. It is made of this steel construction, so I know it does have cathodic protection on it, but it is only a matter of time before that steel starts to deteriorate. We start to have major issues and problems with the pump station. We have recently replaced a comminutor there, and in order to replace that, it was very difficult to work with the existing steel that's inside that. So it was a challenge just to replace that piece of equipment. So that is something that we need to look at. That is probably the most expensive component that really needs to be looked at this point in time. It's been, I hate to say it, the can has been kicked down the road many times to look at this, and you know, it is something that if we were going to install something, you know, discussing it with the operator, he would like to have something that provides safe access in order to work on the pumps, remove the solids that come in, because there are a bar screen that's located in that pump station, that structure, which they need to remove periodically. So they are looking at a capacity, and the feature and the type of structure that we were looking at is actually, there's something similar in Morris Township that has a new headworks that they constructed, and it just allows safer access. You know, we would install a mechanical bar screen there, so they remove more of, right now, a lot of the solids are going through the comminutor, which is basically a grinder, and it grinds up rags and such, but it doesn't grind it up to a point where it still is problematic in the pumps itself and things. So it does, you know, any of these solids do push itself into the plant, and adds other maintenance items. So we wanted to, you know, more modern plant would have a bar screen that would remove those solids and take care of that. If we were to construct that new facility, it would be almost 3 stories below ground, because that's how deep it is. And so it's a very expensive structure. You know, just off the cuff, looking at the size of the structure and things, we didn't do a detailed cost estimate, but you are starting to approach a $4 or $5 million structure to go in there. It's a very expensive item to move forward with that structure. You know, we can certainly look at alternatives that are not going to be as efficient or not as, you know, that allows more, more restrictive access to the pumps and things. And so, you know, certainly if that's something we can consider, but, you know, we've been approaching this let's do the right thing, and let's install a structure that the workers can safely work on all the equipment and just, you know, accommodate it. Typically in a headwork structure, you also incorporate some silt and sediment removal also that gets implanted, because that again work at the tears on wear and tear on the pumps in the plant as it goes through the plant. We don't have a heavy amount of sediment that gets into the plant. So, you know, speaking with the operator, I think we would, if we were designed this to go forward, we'll probably retrofit it so it would accommodate the installation of sediment removal equipment, but we may not install it, and just, you know, maybe just have the accommodation to install it in the future. But we really don't have a heavy grit amount that's into the plant. The other component that's 1960 vintage is the, I say I'm 1960 vintage. So is the primary clarifier. The primary clarifier is just it's a clarifier which takes out a lot of the heavy solids and sludge that initially comes into the plant. It is something that's very effective, and it complements the oxidation ditches well to not overload them and make them more efficient. We could make an argument that you know, technically we don't need a primary clarifier, and that we can overload the oxidation ditches with the solids, and that would then require more maintenance associated with those oxidation ditches. And so at this point, I don't feel strongly of saying that we shouldn't move forward with replacing the primary clarifier, because we know regulations are changing with the DEP, and nitrates are just on the horizon of imposing limits on us, and we are looking at the oxidation ditches as a means of accommodating those changes, future regulations. And then if we take the primary clarifier out, it's going to make that very hard to make that work within the clarifier. So, you know, I think it's from an operational standpoint, it's efficient and makes all the other equipment work more efficiently by putting the primary clarifier in. So at this point, we are recommending that the primary clarifier get rehabilitated to do that work. And the third component is there's an aeration chamber that aerates the effluent before it's discharged to the river. And that again, that's older, an older piece of equipment. We are seeing a lot of deterioration. That's not a heavy cost compared to the other two items, but it is something that's on the horizon that we need to look at. And if we're going to have a larger contract to go forward with either one of those, to incorporate that, it would just be efficient to do it at that time. The rest of the components, they are starting to age also. But I think we do look at, I think the final clarifiers are starting to show wear and tear. I think we may be at a point where we would do a rehabilitation, not a complete replacement in the future, but that's on the horizon also, just to do some rehabilitation work. We did do some rehabilitation work on the primary clarifier about 15 so years ago. We changed the motor, we did some mechanical work, but that work is, even at that time, we were looking at the replacement was in the future. So that's kind of talking about the infrastructure. I also, in my memo, identify that regarding where we are with capacity standpoint, we did look at, I didn't do a full build-out analysis. I just looked at the approved wastewater management plan that we have on file with the DEP, which actually has a build-out analysis included in it. Certainly, it is dated. It could be updated again. But I did update the numbers to accommodate the fact that we have Arbor Green, the affordable housing complex, the Dixie Dale. So we looked at the projects that have been developed and incorporated into those flows. So those are, I updated it to a degree for what activities are going on right now. So we are getting close to our capacity for the 1 MGD. We are approaching that the build out that we anticipated. It was approximately 220 homes was what the build out was. It didn't account for affordable housing projections or anything like that. It just looked at those remaining areas that it looked at the areas that have not been sewered, such as River Road, and adding those homes. Looked at potential larger properties that may be subdivided, and so it looks at those just develop build out a maximum build out of the development based on the current zoning. Again, not taking into consideration of affordable housing. So, if in fact we don't upgrade the plant to 1 MGD, we're going to be pushing the limit to at that point. So the 1 MGD would accommodate the full build out. I think if we had if we applied for a TWA, I think the DEP may flag us and require us to do some additional II inflow and infiltration and inflow reductions just to try and bring those flows down, because we still have that in the system. But that's where we are with the current permitted capacity. So we're not at, we don't need to upgrade that capacity now or in the immediate future, taking into consideration the current build out, but certainly other considerations could go into that. So that's summary.
Well, you certainly have presented many opportunities for question. I did notice two things. You have a off the cuff, back a napkin on the influent pump station, right? $4 or $5 million.
Yep.
There was how much is not holding you to it, primary clarifier going to cost
It's
us?
probably about 500,000.
So that's another $500,000.
Yeah.
All right. And then the aeration basin is the cheap one?
Yeah, that's probably 75 or even less. It's really just doing some rehabilitation work on the concrete.
Okay. So as far as planning goes, those are very rough.
Those are at the immediate forefront of something that's has the potential of failing.
Okay.
That we need to start seriously looking at before we have something failed.
Well, those are serious words.
Yeah.
That is looking at failing, and aged and useful life. We're there, and perhaps even beyond in some degree. And if something fails, one of those major items, what is the potential and the risk to the township?
Well, certainly like I said, if the primary clarifier failed, the plan, it wouldn't be a catastrophic failure. We would work, we would have to modify the plan to accommodate that. You know, other components would be stressed because of that, but it wouldn't be a catastrophic failure. We would take it offline, and we can do that. Now, the pump station is more sensitive, where it could be something that could be very costly if we start to have if we start to see some structural integrity issues with the steel structure itself. That could end up being very expensive to do a temporary repair just to do that. You know, we also have concerns regarding when they work on the pumps. It's in a confined space. You're working in a very tight area. It's also, you know, we have to take in consideration the safety aspects also of that. It is something that, you know, God forbid something happens with, you know, an accident associated with working on that. And many times, or we have to call in a vendor to come in to repair it, because it is something it's so restrictive that you know, the DPW, the sewer department just doesn't feel comfortable sometimes, because it's such a major component that, you know, if that's taking offline, that you have to do bypass pumping in order to do that, and the bypass pumping isn't cheap, and you don't want to do that for a long period of time.
Would the bypass pumping be something that would be brought in on a temporary level with some equipment?
Correct. Yeah,
And
we would rent that out and handle that. And we have done that in the past when we've had to work on the comminutor or had to work on the pumps, and it is inexpensive. We don't want to go on bypass for a long period of time.
Yeah, and that would be the same as far as planning for a replacement on the pump station. You know, you got to operate while you're fixing.
Yeah, that's part of the construction, and that's
Okay.
and that's again, it's an off the cuff estimate,
Understood.
but that is typical for this type of, you know, construction, and that you'd have to consider bypass, and it is a costly expensive. You know, have to run a pumps the whole time so that they can work on the you know, actually demolish and then reconstruct a new facility. They have to do the bypass pumping, and that's part of the cost.
What's the actual location of that pump station?
So if you look at the aerial,
Yep.
it's located at the lower center. It's a small.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Got it.
So it would take up, and actually, when we permitted the effluent pump station, which is the new pump station that actually pumps the effluent all the way to Passaic River, when we obtained the NJDEP permits for that project, we actually carved out an area for the development of the influent pump station. So we actually contemplated you know, that area. So we planned for it.
If you could just kind of high-level look, what's our greatest risk at this time?
I think the greatest risk is really the the influent pump station, the Headworks project. The risk is that you may have to go on bypass pumping for an extended period of time, and that's a cost. That would not necessarily impact the treatability of the plant. You know, that doesn't affect that. We accommodate that. So it's really it's a cost. It's a cost and a safety component that associated with it. So it's really those two things. The aeration, we could, you know, that's something that if we start to see greater deterioration, I don't think that this would be a catastrophic failure. Also with the aeration base and aeration tanks, I think that's something that is just needs maintenance, and I don't see that being a catastrophic failure over the immediate future. But that's something that those are also the 1960 vintage tanks, and so they need work.
Okay. Well, I certainly open it up. There's all kinds of questions that'll come. I am sure.
Yep.
But I'll open up to the.
Yeah, and these components, you know, certainly, if a primary clarifier or an oxidation ditch was taken offline or failed, and we had to do that for an extended period of time, that would affect the treatability of the effluent. We may have, you know, DEP issues of violations and discharges and things of that sort. But these two components are less prone to that failure, that risk.
Anyone on the committee? Mayor, any quick questions for John while we have him here? I'm sure there's many.
Yeah, so I wanted the total cost, because I guess I remember the like 10 million being floated around at some point, and this seems a lot less. So I mean, it's still a pretty big number.
Well,
but
I think,
don't know that-
we were also putting those numbers together regarding the future secondary clarifiers being replaced. So it included other components, but not the primary focus would be the primary clarifier in the headworks, the influent pump station. But certainly the plant does need other maintenance coming into the near future. So I think that's if we were looking at maybe a 5-year projection, we would probably want to look at the final clarifiers within the next 5 years. So I think the $10 million is just more of a projection of what you're going to be seeing in the near future versus the immediate if we just go for the headworks at this time.
So if I hear a 5 works is a 5 years of long-term, and the immediacy is much closer.
Yeah, I think within a 5-year period, we're going to starting getting a little stressed over those clarifiers and pushing the limit on those. So those are going to, they're starting to show work. They certainly need work already with some minor improvements, just on some of the weirs and things are starting to need the replacement. And that's general maintenance. They're not high cost items, but when we start talking about the mechanical arms and the motor and the platforms, it's starting to get, that's when you start getting very expensive.
Other questions?
So I guess in order to start the permitting process, we need to upgrade sand filters or add sand filters first. You said that was a concern, that we might not be permitted because of those?
Correct. If we wanted to increase the treatment capacity of the plant, we would have to plan on upgrading the sand filters, but that's sand filters. That's not a need for like a maintenance or keeping up with it. That's something that would be something that we would expand the plant. And so it's the sand filters are relatively new, not new. Well, they're also in the 90s, but we've been maintaining them. We don't have any issues with them now. That would be an expansion of an existing treatment facility.
And how long is the permitting process? Is it months, years?
Anything you're dealing with the DEP is
Right,
not quick.
it's not
But
quick.
actually, the treatment works approval permit is something that you can process within 90 days. But but you have to put all it's not going to be something that you need a couple months to go through. It's similar, expanding on the report that I did, and it'll be another engineer's report for the sand filters. So it's we have to design the sand filters. So it's a little bit more work involved to actually get the permit application together. But that's something that I just conservatively say we can knock that out in a year by time you get the design done, the permitting done, and go to bid. Construction might be another couple months, but it's you're in that time frame that you say go.
Yep.
Anything more?
I recall that there was discussion that I guess the prior I&I study was expected to reduce, usage of the system about 10%, 10 to 20%. So are we saying that savings occurred and was offset by the new development that was brought on board, or that's coming on board?
Yeah, I don't.
Or have we not
Yeah,
realized that savings?
I don't recall the actual statistics of 10% or 20% being represented by the I&I project. The I&I does, you don't necessarily get, because you're getting infiltration during rainfall events, you're not eliminating that flow on a continuous basis. So it doesn't equate as efficient as looking at your average annual flows that you'd get. So we did actually, there is still some work to do. We did the I&I study. I don't believe that all the work has been corrected yet. I think that was something that the sewer department did have. We've been trying to do that in a more economical way by doing it incrementally versus all at once. And so, certainly we can take a more aggressive what's left on the what's left that we identified. One things that we have, we've done I&I studies in the past, and one of the major hurdles that we've had was because certainly it's easy for us to make modifications or repairs to the mains. You know, the mains are in the right-of-way, we have manholes in the right-of-way, we can easily make those repairs. But the source of the II is not just in our system in the right-of-way, it's also all the private laterals that extend from the right-of-way to the homes. And we have identified those problems in the past, and it gets very difficult to implement those improvements with the residents. We've had a lot of opposition and people objecting and making an issue of us identifying. Clearly we have a video. We can show a video of water clearly flowing through someone's lateral, and it's difficult to enforce that.
Yeah, and actually, it wasn't the I&I study that said that. It was a report. I don't remember whose report it was, but it was kind of speaking to capacity and the constraints. And I think it said something like, an I&I study could reduce the usage by about 20%. So now that, yeah.
Yeah, because, and what we did, we didn't do a study through, what we did initially was we installed meters throughout town, and we we've identified I&I in various sections of town, but we just went right to the area where there was the highest percentage, and we started to look at that one area. We can start to expand that and look at other areas, but we went to the hotspot per se, and just kind of started to look at, get the low-lying fruit, you would say, to just kind of clean up those areas that we were seeing. And so we did identify that, but certainly there's more work that can be done with the I&I to reduce that. So certainly we see some significant peaks in flow during significant rainfall events.
Thank you. I mean, I certainly don't want to mess with wastewater treatment equipment that is way past its useful life. But yeah, I just wanted to have a sense of where we were relative to, and what other options we had relative to meeting capacity.
Anything else? Mark?
So other communities have relied a lot on the iBank for funding these types of things. So, that would be, for the residents' information, that would be forgivable loans or partially forgivable loans or extremely reduced interest rate loans related to projects like this. This is our utility, so it's paid for, and its finances are captured separately from tax revenue. It's a self-liquidating utility. So this. There is separate financing available for that at times, and it's usually a state program. So can you talk about that at all? Or
sure. No, we've took advantage of the iBank on several projects in town. The most recent is when we did abandon the Chatham Glen plant, convert that to a pump station, and build the effluent pump station too. It's a program that administered through the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. They have a separate division just for this, and they reference it as the iBank. And basically, it's a loan program, and actually, we're going through that program is very advantageous because certainly they actually push permits very quickly through that program. So that's one of the programs that one of the reasons some people go through this program is because permits seem to go faster when you're going through the loans, because they're trying to close on the loan and go through the process. Now the process is that half of the loan is based on market value for AAA. You get very low rates for the when they go out to sell. The other half of the loan is 0% from the EPA. So you're blending 0%, 50%, 0%, 50% with low interest, and it gets a very low interest. So you're not going to find a better program to finance infrastructure projects within than the iBank. It's just very, very advantageous. And there are occasions that they do have principal forgiveness, but they run certain programs. Right now, I would have to check and make sure that there's nothing on wastewater, but right now I know for sure that there's lead line replacement is something that's very heavy, is going principal forgiveness. PFAS treatment is available. Combined sewer overflows, where you have a sewer system that's it collects both the sanitary waste and the stormwater, and to separate that, there's loans associated with that. Occasionally there's loans for flood control projects. Occasionally there's for wastewater. So at this point in time, a lot of times the principal forgiveness is tied to regulations that the DEP is mandating on the infrastructure to kind of alleviate that. So right now, a lot of the principal forgiveness is focusing on the drinking water side of it. But I can certainly check and see. I checked it probably a couple months ago. I didn't see anything recently, but I can check it again to make sure. But certainly, I wouldn't say it's something that we would want to wait and see if a grant comes up, because just standard infrastructure like this, where you're not enhancing the treatment, or you're just basically replacing a component that needs to be upgraded. So they tend the grant funding tends to go towards enhancement versus replacement.
If we were to upgrade the oxidation ditches or we were to upgrade the aeration tanks, it would seem to me that those would potentially clean up.
Yes, the one thing that it's a low interest program, but it also comes with a lot of bureaucracy that you have to go through and things, because that 0% from the EPA, you have to comply with federal regulations. So sometimes you get pushed into doing environmental studies, an architectural study, archaeological study, and it just gets things that, depending on the type of the project, sometimes you get pulled into doing more soft costs, more planning costs, but it's certainly the lower interest justifies going for that cost. So rule of thumb, you wouldn't want to go to the iBank, in my opinion, for something less than $500,000. You'd want to do something substantial enough where the interest, the benefits that you're getting from the interest, outweigh the additional effort that's associated with the loan.
Good comments. Z.
Yes.
I am sure you are very much supportive and regular communication with Mr. Rushke here about
Yes.
all that setting us up to be able to participate should the iBank become an opportunity for us. Are there any comments you have?
Yes. So with this information, you may recall at one point, John was requested of our WPC manager to put together preliminary design and estimates, and the list was pretty much for everything. And I went back and said, John, all right, let's focus on the primary items that are more immediate in nature, that really require attention, because estimates will change year to year, and we don't want to just have them sitting on the shelf. And also just deal with the things that really we need to deal with front burner. So that's where this report comes in, as well as your tour as the liaison to DPW and WPC. So the next step would be for John to, and John, I believe you would agree, is for us to, and we've authorized funds under 2023, for John to do preliminary design and estimates for these three things. Then next year in 2025 is when we would start looking at iBank financing to actually put together the definitive plans, the full specs for the headworks, all the items here, as well as even a couple of years out, so that we're lumping everything in for this iBank application. We don't have to, finance it immediately, but we would go out somewhere between $5 to $10 million is what we're looking at for this iBank financing. But that alone has a huge price tag associated with it, just from a soft cost perspective that John's firm would need to undertake. So just in terms of steps, John, right, I'm thinking September, October is if there's agreement, we would engage John's firm to go ahead and do the preliminary design and cost estimates for these three things. Is that correct, John?
Correct.
And then we'd be dealing with 2024 capital, which none of the items in 2024 capital, those are some smaller repairs, things like repairing pumps and motors, vertical turbine pump, a generator for South Side, caustic tank. All this stuff would be in a report that I provide to you. We're looking at all of that being able to be funded through our capital, what we have already sitting in capital and reserve fund balance at the WPC. So that would cover 2024 items, and we've got to get us through to 2025 for the next phase, which is this larger ticket items we would borrow in 2025.
Excellent, thank you. Mayor, any other additional comments that you have, or can you hear me?
No, I'm good. I guess the one question I have is, does anybody have any objections proceeding forward?
Anybody have any objections to moving forward on that basis? Mark? I think you were duly assigned, sirs.
Thank you.
So we'll have that on for September.
Yep, okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate that. Very comprehensive and lots to do.
Good night, everyone.
Are we, is that it for the workshop session?
Yes, it is,
All right.
Mr. Chair, unless there's any, questions or further discussion on the agenda items, but
Okay, so we're going to move into the regular meeting section. And we're going to start off with the mayor's message remote from the North Country.
Thank you. All right, I just want to pull up my notes because they just disappeared. I wanted to thank everyone who called into our July 23rd special meeting to provide feedback on the Colony Pool construction plans. I'd also like to thank the Colony Advisory Committee members and the Township Committee members who spent a lot of time getting input on the renovation. Our work as a committee is always made better by input from the community, and we appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this process. The pool renovation was intended to address the crumbling sidewalls, which are well past their useful life. We had a tight timeline in order to begin work in the fall. Many Colony Pool members were not pleased with the initial draft design, so we held a special meeting on July 23rd in the hopes we could come to a consensus while meeting requirements. The committee was not ready to take a vote at that meeting and requested more time for community input. Given the delay and the interest of the committee to get more input, it is not feasible to begin construction in the fall. There are too many variables that could throw off the timely completion of the work, and we would not want to risk the pool opening in the spring. The best course of action is to plan for the construction work in the fall of 2025. That gives us time to get more input from the community on what they'd like to see done. Our township administrator will coordinate a process to collect input from the community, and then, based on that feedback, new design options will be presented for community input. Again, I thank the residents for their input. While the committee is elected by the community to make decisions on behalf of residents, our outcomes are always better when our residents are engaged in the process. Residents can reach the committee via email, or we're happy to schedule a call or a meeting if you'd like to discuss any of the colony matters further, or anything else for that matter. I will also resume the Mayor's Wellness Committee Walk with the Mayors come September. We're looking at September 21st for our next walk. Promoting health and wellness in our community is so important. Exercise and connecting with nature can be a positive factor in maintaining health and wellness. The Mayor's Walks are a wonderful way to get exercise while exploring our beautiful trails and talking about events in the township. I look forward to connecting with residents, whether on the Mayor's Walk or otherwise. Your input and questions are always welcome. I'm also pleased to announce this evening that we will establish by resolution our Community Events Committee. We have a talented group of community volunteers who are committed to building a friendly and welcoming community through the coordination of special occasion events. They will work with our municipal staff and community groups to plan, coordinate, promote, and implement events. I want to thank them for their service, and I look forward to getting together with residents in their first event in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go on, move into the Township Committee reports, and Mr. Lois, we'll start with you.
Sure. So Colony Pools, the swim team won their last meet and were able to jump off the dock into the pool. That was a big celebration. That's a highlight for the kids. Swim team had their end of season party. If anyone's interested in joining the pool or joining the swim team, all are welcome, and that's definitely a lot of fun. I know my children participate in it, along with about 40 other friends. And we had 4 swimmers at the Meet of Champions, and they placed very well. So it was a very successful season for many. The Colony Pool Advisory Committee was tasked with discussing alternatives for the log roll, and we have identified 3 and bandied about those, and it includes a replacement log roll, which we've identified, and some other options, lily pads and one other item. And so we'll be presenting that when we've made sort of more clear decisions, because there are for these lily pads, there are design options, and there's there's different alternatives and specifics that could be made. So we'll present on that. Recreation was supposed to meet, based on our pool meeting, was supposed to meet, but it has not. So I'm looking forward to Mr. Choi to coordinating that meeting. And that is all that I have.
Thank you, sir. I will take the charge because in the usual progression. I'll start with the Environmental Commission. I'll point out, these are pretty short reports, but there is a project of which participation will be available, and that is on the restoration of the slope up at the Shunpike Fields. Great project. Money's there, plans are there, so get aboard and check the site and look to contribute, because that's a good one to participate in outdoors. Beautiful fall. It'll start come September with that works. The library, no major report other than, again, a thank you for the diligence and hard efforts of the staff down at the library to keep us comfortable during an incredibly hot summer, and all the actions they need to take there. And on to Mrs. Rowland.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we had to cancel National Night Out because of the torrential rain and the storm that came through. But I did clean out my adopted drain, Dresden, following the storm to make sure that it was clear and up and down the street. So if anyone to support the township and the initiative about adopting a drain, it's going to only contribute to our sewer treatment and water treatment. You adopt a drain and then you make sure that it's clear pre and post storms. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of stuff that collects at the drains. But Mayor Ewald and I last Friday had the privilege of celebrating Jean White's 106th birthday. That Stacy issued, Mayor Ewald issued a proclamation for her. It was a great party over at Juniper Village, and it just really, she has contributed so much, not only to our community, but also throughout her life and in her service during World War II. So that was really, it was a pleasure to celebrate with her. And we also are moving forward. Ben Burnich is doing his Eagle Scout project. They opened up a GoFundMe and it blew up, and everybody donated. The community really rallied around it, and he will be building bocce courts at the senior center. So we're excited about that. That's it.
Excellent. Anything, Madam Mayor? Can you hear me?
No, but that's, yes, thank you. No, I have no additional things to add, but thank you to Committeewoman Rowland to remind me about Jean White's 106th birthday, because she definitely was an impressive, is an impressive person, and it was a pleasure to be there. So I appreciate that reminder, and I'm thrilled to hear the bocce courts are moving forward. That's wonderful news as well.
Okay, we'll go into the introduction of ordinances. First up.
Mr. McHugh, I can't hear you. Is your mic on?
All right, we'll move into the introduction of ordinances. Mr. Shahadi, would you like to start with a quick summary?
Sure. So the first ordinance relates to our permissive, or rather days that construction is not permitted, and that's on Sundays and holidays. Because of change in legislation, both at the state and federal level, adding Juneteenth as a holiday, we are including it in our schedule as well, so that way it's clear and police can enforce that. And then the next ordinance concerns rules and regulations, as we don't have a concise or comprehensive set of rules and regulations for our parks and fields that governs all of them. We've only had on our books one for the skate park and one for Colony, and there's been a lot of issues that have arisen and questions that have arisen. So this follows what a lot of towns around us. I looked at about half a dozen communities, took bits and pieces from all of them as they apply, make sure that it doesn't adversely affect our recreation activities as well. We discussed this at workshop. There's been no additional feedback received since then, and provided that to our township attorney who drafted the ordinance, and that's what you've got today.
Okay, do I have a motion for introduction of?
So moved.
I motion, and I will second that.
Any discussion? Might I have a vote?
Mr. Lois?
Yes.
Mr. McHugh?
We have a raised hand in the audience.
Where
We're-
this is not a public hearing, so this is introduction.
This is the introduction of the ordinance.
Public hearing's not till the end of the meeting, and the public hearing on these items will be at the end of September when we actually have the public hearing scheduled. This is introduction.
This is introduction. Yep.
So,
Mr.
Moving
McHugh,
on with the-
I would move that we suspend the rules and allow our residents.
so
to
moving
speak.
on with the vote, Mr. McHugh?
It's Mr. Lois first.
We're in the middle of a vote. Discussion is closed.
Did you vote, Mr. Lois?
Mr. Lois
Yes.
voted. Mrs. Rowland?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes, and public hearing will be on September 24th.
Okay, we're going to the consent agenda. These are.
No, we need,
Oh, I'm sorry, the Parks and Recreation one? Okay. Do I have a motion for ordinance 2024-18, Parks and Motion?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
yes. I have a couple questions on this one. It's under park hours, there's a call-out that says, it sort of excludes, it says not applicable to lighted fields for the use of township sanctioned sports or recreational activities. Makes a lot of sense to me. But we don't have similar language to that on activities that I think township sanctioned sports and recreational activities would be doing or have done in the past. So for instance, under the second section, so under 20-3.2, so it reads to me to say, no person shall, and then it lists a whole bunch of sort of prohibited things. And I'm wondering if these are these things excluded from township sanctioned sports and recreational activities? And where I'm going with this specifically is this one, to solicit, sell, or offer any sale, any goods without a permit issued by the Township of Chatham. Are our sports teams still allowed to, use the field house to sell something, to support their teams, or to raise funds, given that language, given the language for 20-3.2?
Yes, I apologize, my computer died, so I need to, borrow these. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, the 20-3.3
Mhm.
exceptions, I think covers those, when it's, when requested in advance and in writing to the township administrator.
And is
So
that
exceptions to all of the ones above can be granted.
can be granted,
Yep.
but it's not assumed to be granted? I'm just wondering if we're putting a burden on the, because it is considered, it is a regular thing. I mean, the field house was always used to sell from, that's what, at Nash Field. I mean, it just seems to me like we're adding a step maybe that we could avoid.
I mean, it's a boy, they got that approval.
I don't anticipate that being.
Okay. And then the only other one I have is under prohibited uses, no person shall, and it's item C. It's a little confusing to me. It says, take any animal into any parks or playgrounds except on a leash. Okay, so your dog's on a leash, go to a park or playground. Not longer than 6 feet, or to permit any pet to go into the active public play areas, apparatus area, athletic field, or recreational enclosure, or building unless said pet is participating in a township program. So that reads to me like, can you take your dog to a playground and sit in the apparatus area, like, at Shunpike? Can you sit on a bench with your dog on a leash? Because that's what it seems like it might be prohibiting that, or construed that it could be prohibiting that. I don't want that.
Technically, it is still prohibited, it's prohibited right now under our ordinances.
And
So it's saying you cannot take a pet into a playground area. That's what it said.
right, but it's saying you can take them to a park, but you can't take them to a playground area.
Right. So within where, oftentimes playgrounds are, gated off, fenced off, within a park, you can't take them into that area.
Okay, but our parks, they're not, and so we're saying, I mean, we're passing an ordinance that says you can't sit on the bench at Shunpike Field and watch your kids with your dog. seems to me a
But
little.
when I
wrong.
read it, it seemed like, because I was looking at that as well, I thought it said something like active play areas. So I saw it as, which made sense where the kids would actually be, climbing on the equipment and playing on the equipment.
Correct.
I can't open it out, but I just remember, because I looked at that as well, and that was the part that gave me,
I can read it for you. Take any animal into any parks or playgrounds except on a leash not longer than 6 feet, or to permit any pet to go into any active public play area, apparatus area, athletic field, or recreational enclosure or building, unless said pet is participating in a township program. So I guess in your example, the bench to this, I'm sorry? There, sorry about that. So in your example, if the bench is not in an active, public play area, then it would be permitted as long as they were on a leash 6 feet or shorter.
And once you leave your own property, our animal control ordinance requires that the dog be on a leash anyway. This is, the only real impact this has is the length of the leash. That it can't be one of those leashes where the dog can be 20 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, is there any area that addresses service animals? Is that covered somewhere?
I mean, it certainly would be, trumped by federal law and requirements. We don't address it specifically here. But again, there's the exceptions that kind of allows for any exception to the above provisions.
But those are all in writing? The
In advance in
exceptions.
writing, you're saying, because the exceptions have to be in advance in writing?
Yeah, I mean, because our play areas, I mean, you go to Shumpike Field, the play area is bordered and all wood chipped. And there's benches and picnic tables and, areas for families to congregate. And they are directly up against the apparatus and the public play area. I mean, literally, you're running by these benches, so, I mean,
Dogs
it's.
aren't allowed there right now. Our ordinance doesn't allow dogs on public property.
Well, I understand, but what I'm saying is it certainly does.
Really making it more restrictive, it's not making it more restrictive here. In fact, it's providing for more flexibility than currently exists.
How is it providing more flexibility?
Because currently, dogs are not allowed, even in your situation of somebody sitting on a bench, a dog's not allowed on public property right now. So this now allows, as the attorney explains, somebody could sit on a bench with their dog with a leash outside the playground, where currently it's technically not allowed under ordinance.
I don't know if that's accurate, but I do know that, it doesn't sound accurate, but what I do know is that, this is a little bit ambiguous, and if we do want people to be able to sit on a little bench and watch their children play while holding their dog's leash, I don't just see why we can't just simply, amend item C here, to not longer than 6 feet, or permit any pet to go into any active public play area, which to me sounds like a field, which is, I think that's probably appropriate. But apparatus area, I think if we just simply removed apparatus area, because I can't think of any apparatus area we have other than children's playgrounds. We don't have a jungle gym or a workout facility or anything like that, So if we just simply removed apparatus area, I think that would satisfy my concern.
If we remove apparatus area, that would mean that, that people would be allowed to have pets within a playground, by the swings, by the slide. So it's up to you whether or not you want to permit that.
My son, before we got a dog, my son was terrified of dogs, and I wouldn't want him to bring him to the park, and just because someone wanted to bring their dog, take your dog somewhere else. I would just say, I wouldn't want him to not be able to enjoy the playground because he was scared. That's, just a personal.
You don't allow that, you don't want that exact
Right.
reason, that's why it's, we did it this way.
Right.
Whereas, the active play, we've got turf fields, we've got, you don't want animals being able to run on
Right.
fields where people would play baseball or football, or that's not what that's for, people have dog runs,
Right.
they have open fields for that, but that's not a play area. You don't want them
Right.
there.
Also, I'm just thinking aloud, my own pets that, what if they went to the bathroom? I don't know if I'd want dogs going to the bathroom.
I was just gonna say that
There
from a
where
health
your kid-
perspective, you don't want
Yeah.
From the Board
kids
of Health
playing
Department.
baseball in a dog's rest facilities.
Right.
This seems pretty standard practice, I think, what we're suggesting here. And currently under chapter 5-2.2, it says, we have something, no owner of a dog shall take it upon or permit or suffer it to enter upon any recreation area, park, or other property of the township, and it goes on, but that currently you're not allowed to have dogs anywhere on our stuff. So this is actually creating a little bit more flexibility.
Mark, and you live with, you're really looking at a narrow circumstance a little bit.
Well,
you know,
it's.
On
I
kind of the
think we
border
discussed it.
areas as
I think-
opposed to
I
the
think we
others.
discussed it. It's,
Right, others are comfortable? All right, can we move forward?
Sure. Thanks for answering my questions.
Can I have a vote?
Mr. Lois?
Yes.
Mr. McHugh?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowland?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes. Public hearing will be on September 24th.
Okay, we're going to move into the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes for pulling out for discussion? Mayor? Mark?
I'm good, thank you.
Might I have a motion?
So moved?
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Might I have a vote?
Mr. Lois?
Yes.
Mr. McHugh?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowland?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And now, someone in the audience or two, we have the second hearing of citizens. Just a real quick recap on the rules. Mr. Clerk.
And since we actually have a bit more of an audience now, just quick go over this. Members of the public are welcome to come to the microphone to address the committee. This is an opportunity for the public to address issues that are not scheduled for public hearings tonight. Those present may step up to the microphone to be heard. And if you're watching Zoom, you may speak during this session by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether you're in person or online, when you are recognized to speak, please mind the following procedures. Say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Rather than use your time answering questions, the committee will wait until you're finished speaking before responding. This is the second of 2 public comment sessions on the agenda. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 3 minutes during each public comment period. And we still don't have any written comments delivered to me prior to 3 p.m.
Okay. Anyone in the public wish to speak? Please come up.
May I sit there? 'Cause I have papers.
You can grab the mic.
Oh, I can't use that one. That one has a red light on it. Oh. Okay, no problem. My name is Karen Blumenfeld. That's spelled Blumenfeld. And I reside on Maple Street in the township. And I'm very happy to hear any talk about the colony pool, given that my family are originally colony members going back 100 years. So I'm so grateful to the township committee and to the mayor. Mayor, I'm looking at you on the screen. For always thinking about the colony and keeping that alive. So I want to thank you so much. And perhaps I can talk about being part of the Colony Pool Advisory Committee or coming to a meeting, since I kind of know about that pool. I've got less than 3 minutes, so I want to get to it. The first is I want to talk to you about Ordinance 2024-17. So the original ordinance in place has its intent to ensure that residents are able to quietly enjoy their property, free from any kind of construction or contract noise on Sundays and on holidays. However, the original ordinance in place does not address construction or contract activity taking place indoors, which is of concern given that indoor construction or contract work can create noise levels of similar disturbance that occur outside, which is what this particular ordinance seeks to protect against. On numerous Sundays this past spring, this issue occurred at a neighboring property of mine, and that included running a portable outdoor generator that was very loud, which appeared to be at an equivalent noise level not within the intent of this original ordinance, which is to eliminate noise created by construction or contract projects on Sunday or holidays. So I respectfully request that the mayor and the committee consider amending the proposed ordinance's section 2 to incorporate no indoor activity if there is an outdoor generator running or equivalent noise creating equipment, or if noise created from the indoor work is disruptive to the neighbor. At one instance, I did call it in, but the police said it's indoors, so their hands are tied, which I can understand, but that didn't alleviate the concern. So thank you for your consideration on that. Secondly, my profession is in public health, and specifically 30 years of expertise in tobacco control. I respectfully request a consideration for a technical amendment to proposed ordinance 2024-18. Section 20-3.2 refers to a list of activities prohibited in these areas of the parks and recs areas, and subsection L refers to smoking. However, there's no definition of smoking included, and that definition should be consistent with your local ordinance 3-11 entitled Smoking Regulations, which uses the same definition of smoking that's in the New Jersey Smoke-Free Air Act. It's important to use the same definition of smoking in the proposed ordinance to avoid confusion by the public and helps with enforcement. Of particular note is that the proposed ordinance does not refer to vaping. Okay, no problem. So I have for you paperwork. This is your proposed ordinance, and I circled where smoking is related. This is the ordinance that you have on the books, 311, with the definition. And then this is the state law that you can refer to.
Thank you, Ms. Moonville. I appreciate it. Thank you, Karen.
Good evening. My name is Stuart Carr, C-A-R-R, from 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham Township, New Jersey. 3 items. Number 1 is Oprah. Number 2, Oak Knoll. And number 3 is, what was my number 3? Green Village Trail. Before that, though, also want to consider this idea of a reasonable length of time. Young lady's in the middle of a sentence. First of all, Mr. Lois got cut off saying he wanted to get her up here before. Then we're at 3 minutes, and we have a clerk here cutting off a citizen, okay? I understand 3 minutes is, important, but if somebody's saying something substantive, let's let them finish and have the reasonable length of time, latitude here at the dais, so we can, again, respect the citizens who take the time to come out here and say something important. So if we could please consider that, that would be appreciated. All right, anyway, what's my first thing? What did I say?
Oprah.
Oprah, yes. Wanted to check going forward, since we lost that case, or at least some of us lost that case. Some of us liked the result. What are we going to be doing, getting an attorney who knows what he or she is doing, to find out what can be done in terms of information that's in the Chatham Township domain at this point to get that online? Okay, number 1, what is the universe of information that's publicly available, that's public information by definition, that we have to ask to get, and we have to be very specific now. How can we get that online? What the cost of that would be, what the timeline would be to do that, and then can we have some kind of a LexisNexis or Google capability or whatever to do a basic word search, thought search capability, some engine like that, to be able to get it information. That way, poor Mr. LeConte here won't have to, again, address as many of these Oprah requests and all the frivolities and all the concerns that were raised about Oprah being problematic can hopefully be somewhat alleviated. So Mr. Shahade, or we can direct Mr. Shahade or somebody to get on that to find out what that work plan would be, what that cost would be, what the timeline would be appreciated. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, Oak Knoll, chewing out Mr. Mr. Shahadi a little bit, Mr. Lois a little bit, and Mr. Choi just a little bit from a couple weeks ago. Discussion about the Oak Knoll field and using it. I think Mr. Choi said, and again I may have misspoke or misheard, he was basically saying that the Oak Knoll folks are effectively doing us a service by letting us do that, number one. Number two, Mr. Shahadi was speaking about the idea that, well, we're getting charged only a few bucks because Oak Knoll has an insurance cost they have to pay. Now, again, Mr. Shahadi wasn't here. A lot of you folks weren't here when the original thing was done with respect to Oak Knoll. But that was a deal we cut with Oak Knoll. There wasn't anything about costs, even if it's only a few bucks. That, again, we were supposed to have access to those fields. And if they say, well, they have to have security people, that's their problem, not our problem, okay? So we shouldn't be spending 50 bucks or 100 bucks. And where I have issue with Mr. Lois, he was saying, hey, can we get money out of the rec fund to pay for this? If we want to take people and send them to Piscataway to practice or something, and we want to pay for that, that'd be fine, okay? No problem. But to give money to Oak Knoll is absurd, okay? And then number three, I will come back with respect to that. I apologize, Mr. LeConte, for going over 3 minutes. I will endeavor not to do that going forward. But hopefully on the dais, we will be able to get some latitude for people who do have something to talk about and do have some concerns. Thank you again for your time. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. A couple things. Mr. Shadi, do you want to give a summary on the first one from Ms. Blumenfeld on the noise, indoor, outdoor? Is that something that can be defined within the language?
I'd say our attorney and I could certainly look into that. This was only introduction, but as it's written, it doesn't preclude the enforcement against indoor either. It does apply indoor and outdoor the way it's written. But
Yeah, it's not specific to outdoor. I don't know, you know, when, I mean, maybe it is generators. It talks about contractors, so it limits it to that. So if it's a property owner running a generator, it's not going to apply. So it's just running of a generator unless they're running construction equipment. I'm just not sure that that would apply to this. So the limitation is on contractors, not on property owners, but it does not specify outside work.
Okay. Anyone else have comments? Mayor, any comments?
I would just say, you know, ask if we could check that, because I am surprised, even from a noise ordinance perspective, if we were exceeding the noise ordinance, why the police would not have responded. So, not that I'm questioning that, I'm just wondering if there's something, you know, lacking in the ordinance that they were not able to follow through. So if we could just check that and make sure that,
Yeah, I mean,
how that's addressed.
we can also look into a specific instance. I mean, it's, as Tiana said, it's hard to, I mean, if a homeowner is doing work in their own property and, you know, when it's outdoors, you see work happening, it's easier for the police, you know, otherwise they're gonna knock on the door and say, we wanna go into your house and see what's going on. I think we run into some other issues there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, if somebody's at home, they have the day off, they wanna do some work around their own house, you're not gonna preclude that. It's more of if a contractor is being hired at the state, but then it does apply. You'll see the trucks, you'll see the vans, you'll see crews coming in and out, so it's a little easier to enforce that. So just sometimes from practicality, it's one thing to have an ordinance on the books, and it's another thing to figure out how do we actually enforce it, so you're not just having something that's unenforceable.
And with the generator, if there was an actual noise ordinance violation, that would be applicable any day of the week, not just Sundays and holidays, if the noise was at the level of being a violation.
Okay, and how about the smoking definition, or the state definition of the reference or the final language? Is that something that could easily be?
Yes, I'll
Included.
take a look at that because I appreciate that concern about vaping for sure. So, yep, we'll
I
take a look at that.
do believe we have an ordinance about smoking on municipal property, which I don't know if that includes vaping, but that is addressed elsewhere in the code book.
So we can take a look at, and perhaps it will be something that we need to amend that portion of the ordinance. So we will take a look at that.
Okay, and then moving on to Mr. Carr's questions, a little bit more extensive, particularly on the Oprah definition of what's available, how it's available, and those kinds of things. I guess between the administrator and the clerk, is that a conversation that can be clarified today or something you want to come back to?
It's something to come back to. I mean, we are undergoing a website revamp. We're adding a lot more information and organizing a lot better. So hopefully that will address a lot of the records that people are looking for. We'll be able to find them a lot more simply on our website now. But even still, I don't want to speak for our clerk, but I mean, I get it too. We get people who submit Oprah requests for things that are already on the website anyways. They just don't want to do the work themselves to find it. So they think, let me just send it into the clerk and have them do the work for me. And, you know, then the clerk is oftentimes saying, okay, here's the budget's a perfect example. By law, we have to put that on there.
And I did have
He still gets Oprah requests for that.
just a few days ago, I got an Oprah request for the budget and last year's annual debt statement, which my response was to send the person links to the website where they've been posted for quite some time. So we do post stuff to the website. People don't bother to look at the website. One of the most common requests I get is for permit summaries for real estate transactions. On the website, we grant access to the SDL portal so people can look that up themselves if they bothered to take the time. But I still get frequent requests, several a week for those.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. However, I think the question is a little more extensive on possibilities of access a little bit more, you know, from the data availability so that the website can be used more or the access is available to them. And I think that's more what the comment was generated, at least that's my understanding of what the comment was more generated at.
It's really important stuff for transparency is on the website. Anything beyond that, like if someone wants a property record card or an accident report, we do have a responsibility to safeguard people's private information. So there is a limit to how much we can have.
No, I understand in the changing dynamic of the rules as they are changed, but I think it's something for consideration, if certainly between the mayor and the administrator, how we might be able to respond to the very specific requests.
We can, the administrator and I can look at ways that if there's other documents that we might want to make readily available, we can certainly consider that.
That'd be terrific. All right, and the one we missed. Go ahead, Mark. Other comments from the committee?
I think Mr. Carr's comments in general are just about resident friendliness in terms of information, and I think we can do a better job. And you don't have to look too far back, just 2 meetings ago, when we were discussing colony pool design, and the public document was not available before the public meeting, and it wasn't available online. So we didn't have that until we had the special meeting, and that was a big problem. So it is a disposition. It's not a question, it's not a technological hurdle, it's a disposition. And so when those kind of things get done, and they're done repeatedly, then people are saying, well, what other documents are there? Or like, you know, Green Village Connector Trail, you know, that there was a complaint from coming from a group of residents that came here repeatedly. It was like they wanted more access to more of the documents and design documents. So I think that without getting, you know, picking it apart, I think you can absolutely have a greater commitment to having documents that are relevant to the public available publicly, particularly when they pertain to a meeting. And if we're not doing it when they pertain to a meeting, then the idea is that, hey, maybe we're not doing this with other things at other times. And so I think we could start there. Let's start with making sure that the meetings we have full agenda packets with all the information. That's one of my big issues with the workshop meetings, because we have tons of documents and things that we talk about in reference that the public doesn't see. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me how this is being done. So when someone comes in and questions and says, hey, you know, I would like to have an easier way to search or look for or call in, or, you know, I'm concerned about Oprah, this is the genesis. This is the reason why you're getting those questions.
So if we're talking about Oprah still, Oprah does have exemptions for, you know, draft and deliberative documents. So let's not confuse Oprah with, you know, transparency for meeting documents. If someone puts in an Oprah request for a draft deliberative document, I'm bound by the law to deny that.
I certainly defer to you in the technicals here, and I'm saying I think the sentiment is based in those lackings, and we've seen them manifest themselves here.
Which, to that end, if the committee wants, as a policy matter, to release certain draft documents pertaining to meetings on the website, you know, the committee can adopt a policy about that to give me specific direction.
Okay, we can follow with that, with the mayor. Any other comments from the committee?
Just the last one on Oak Knoll, that was brought up also.
Yes, please.
The condition of approval did not specify that it had to be free. It just simply says that they shall not unreasonably withhold permission for us to request to use the property, and, you know, so it gave them latitude in that. I think that language of shall not unreasonably withhold permission allows them. Fortunately, they and we are just following the conditions of that approval, so.
Anything else? Madam Mayor, anything from afar?
I don't want to speculate on what Mr. Carr was going to ask or say regarding the Green Village Trail, but I will say that the residents had asked that we would do a site visit, and we wanted to hold off until September to make sure, you know, most were around. It does become a little complicated to have all 5 of us, because then you have to have a, you know, meeting notice, and especially in that location, it just becomes a little bit complicated. So we're going to have to figure that out. But the goal is to have site, whether it's one or multiple site visits for the committee members, occur in September. So I just wanted to make residents aware of that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Motion to adjourn?
I
So
would be
moved.
happy to make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Recording stopped.